Allen Lund Company, 47 years young and a proud sponsor, wishes OOIDA all the best as you celebrate 50 years.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Reddick.
Iowa's Department of Transportation is trying something new to tackle an increase in fatal accidents. They're called safety corridors. Benjamin Hucker of the Iowa DOT explains why the state is undertaking the task. What do you eat while you're out on the road? In the past, truck stops had a reputation for home-cooked style meals. Now it's more common to find fast food outlets instead. I'll discuss a survey on the topic with Chris Oliver of Trucker Path. When you lease onto a motor carrier, there's a lot of important information you need to know when it comes to insurance. We spoke with OOIDA's Truck Insurance Department about what to look for in your lease agreement. And finally, a Pennsylvania House committee has taken the first step toward addressing a shortage of truck parking in the state. Scott Thompson discusses that and more with our state legislative expert, Keith Goebel. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story today. The Women of Trucking Advisory Board wrapped up its duties on Monday by making final recommendations to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. The board, formed last year as part of the infrastructure law, was tasked with coming up with ways to attract more women to the trucking industry and keeping them there. Some of their final recommendations: setting up a system to report complaints about sexual harassment and assault, and removing drivers who commit such offenses. The board also called for a rating system for carriers that demonstrates their commitment to safety and anti-harassment standards. And with regard to recruiting more women into the industry, the board recommended expanding government grant programs for female CDL seekers, along with financial help for childcare, transportation, and living expenses. The recommendations now go to FMCSA Administrator Robin Hutchison, who will take them and submit a report to Congress. Administrator Hutchison took a few minutes at the start of Monday's meeting to address the board.
You recommended we establish a safety hotline for women. The National Consumer Complaint Database is not the place for women to call when they are feeling like they are having a problem. It needs a different place, and we are now working on it. We are working already to set that up. You have hammered home the need for enhanced training and mentoring of women in the commercial motor vehicle industry. This is recruitment. This is retention. This is the training that women need to stay in the industry.
While the board came to agreements on a number of recommendations, there was one point of contention surrounding overtime pay. The board's initial report was going to suggest removing the trucking industry exemption from the Fair Labor Standards Act, something that prevents drivers from getting overtime pay. But board member Alexandra Rosen, director of legislative affairs for the American Trucking Associations, countered. Rosen claimed removing the exemption could have unintended consequences.
There would be a high chance that it would impact wages negatively because many owner-operators are paid by the load and miles. So picking overtime, one thing, upends kind of a century of those pay arrangements. So that would be kind of the crux of that concern.
Fellow board member Kelly Lynn McLaughlin, who's a truck driver, countered as well.
This doesn't apply to owner-operators in their own business. This applies to company drivers, not to owner operators, because you don't pay yourself an hourly wage. You book for a load or a job, a function. And this relates to the majority of drivers that are company drivers, not company owners and not independent operators.
Despite some pushback from other members of the board, they ultimately decided to water down the FLSA language. Instead of recommending a removal of the exemption, they recommended further review and research of the issue. The national average for a gallon of diesel continues trending downward. Last week's average fell to $4.29 on the Energy Information Administration's weekly report, down more than 7 cents compared to the week before. All 10 regions recorded price declines, and half saw prices go down by more than a dime. Over the past 3 weeks, the diesel average across the U.S. has dipped more than 25 cents. ProMiles.com shows more of the same this week. They had the Tuesday morning nationwide average at $4.32 a gallon, down 6 cents from a week earlier. As with the EIA report, the ProMiles one has prices down in every single region this week. Cargo theft in the trucking industry has reached unprecedented levels and shows no sign of letting up. That's the big takeaway from CargoNet's 2023 third quarter supply chain risk trends analysis report. CargoNet says there were a total of 692 theft events recorded in the United States and Canada between June and September. That's up 59% compared to the third quarter of 2022. The company attributes most of that increase to ongoing shipment misdirection attacks, a type of theft in which thieves use stolen carrier and broker identities to gain control of freight, redirect it, and then steal it. New details about the indefinite closure of I-10 through downtown Los Angeles. Authorities are now investigating the fire that caused it as an arson case. Governor Gavin Newsom broke that news at a press conference on Monday. Structural engineers and contractors have been working around the clock to reopen the freeway. Governor Newsom said they've uncovered a bit of good news in that process.
The structural analysis is ongoing. The core samples we referenced yesterday, the original core samples, have determined on the basis of the preliminary sampling that the structural integrity of the deck appears to be much stronger than originally assessed.
The stretch of I-10 affected is one of the nation's busiest freeways, carrying some 300,000 vehicles per day on average. The closure is forcing drivers, however, to take other routes far out of their way. As of right now, officials have no estimate for a reopening of I-10. The fire that caused all this broke out underneath the freeway just after midnight on Saturday. Firefighters say it burned for 3 hours and spread over an area the size of 6 football fields before being put out. Expect a lot of company on the roads next week. AAA forecasts the busiest Thanksgiving travel period in several years. More than 55 million people are expected to travel somewhere, more than 49 million by car, between the Wednesday before Thanksgiving and the Sunday after. That ranks it the third busiest Thanksgiving travel period in the more than 2 decades AAA has tracked it. The worst time to be on the road next week, AAA says it's Wednesday afternoon when traffic will be 80% higher than normal in some areas. The best times to travel, Wednesday morning and Sunday morning. An emergency proclamation in Iowa prompted by a bird flu outbreak continues to spread. Taylor County is the latest to get the emergency treatment. The governor's office in Iowa says a case of bird flu has been confirmed at a commercial egg layer site in the county. The declaration for Taylor County will remain in effect through December 10th. As with previous disaster proclamations enacted last month, this new one allows vehicles to move overweight loads up to 90,000 pounds on non-interstate highways without a permit if assisting in emergency relief efforts. Motor carriers and commercial vehicle drivers responding to the emergency in affected counties can also take advantage of extended hours of service. Iowa is hardly alone in all this. Nebraska, Colorado, and Minnesota are also dealing with their own bird flu outbreaks. A new report paints a grim picture of a 150-mile stretch of Interstate 40 between Albuquerque and the Arizona border. The New Mexico DOT put it together. It details numerous problems, from miles of crumbling roads and dangerously short on-ramps to multiple bridges in disrepair and a high rate of crashes. The study also includes suggestions for improvements to I-40. They include maintaining 2 lanes of traffic both ways, widening the shoulders, and adding a 3rd lane where needed. According to that same report, building a 3rd lane could cost up to $4.8 billion. And finally, several dozen new truck parking spots have just opened up in western Georgia. Love's has a new travel stop location in West Point off Interstate 85 at Exit 2. It adds 79 truck parking spaces to the area. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. Next, I'll discuss Iowa's new safety corridors with Ben Hucker of the state's Department of Transportation. We'll be back in just a moment with more news and information. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Today's rising costs affect everyone. Replace your harmonic damper with a genuine ViberTech TVD viscous damper to prevent costly repairs and downtime. Keep your money in your pocket and your truck on the road with ViberTech TVD. Recommended replacement at 500,000 miles or 15,000 hours.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off TruckStop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2023 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
Firestone tires are for more of everything. more miles for every tire dollar, and more confidence in your fleet. At Firestone, we help fleets save with dependable value. Find your local Firestone dealer today at firestonetire.com/dealer.
Landline Now. Welcome back. Iowa's Department of Transportation is trying something new to tackle an increase in fatal accidents on the state's roadways. They're called safety corridors. Benjamin Hucker of the Iowa DOT explained why the state's undertaking the task and what they hope to accomplish. First of all, why is the Iowa DOT creating a safety corridor program? What spurred the DOT to undertake the project?
Sure. So at the Iowa Department of Transportation, we're looking at proactive safety solutions that help to achieve our overall goal of reducing fatalities to below 300 per year annually. Roadway fatalities have been trending in the wrong direction for the past few years, and so our goal is to bring them back down. Many years ago, we were under 300, and of course, we'd like to see it at zero, but we feel like getting down to 300 is a short-term achievable goal, and then we can ratchet down after that. So this is one of our steps that we're taking to try to reduce serious injury and fatality crashes out there along the roadway.
What is involved? I mean, what makes something a safety corridor?
Yes. So a safety corridor has several components. The first component is an increase in law enforcement presence on the roadway and enforcement action. We want to remind drivers and kind of help them remember to, be safe behind the wheel, follow the traffic laws, don't speed, don't drive distracted, things of that nature. So enforcement helps us with that. We're also putting up signs along the corridor that remind folks that they're in a safety corridor and to, hopefully that spurs them to drive more safely. We're increasing the pavement markings within these safety corridors. The width of the pavement markings are going from 4 inches wide to 6 inches wide, and the additional width, just makes those markings just a little bit easier to see, and so that is a proven safety countermeasure to help hopefully keep folks on the road and reduce those run-off-the-road crashes. And then lastly, also just a public education campaign. Our strategic communications folks, both at the Governor's Traffic Safety Bureau and the Iowa DOT and the Iowa State Patrol are partnering together to create public awareness campaigns throughout the length of the pilot programs in each of the corridor areas, just to remind folks the importance of safe driving and that we want everybody to get home to their family and their loved ones at the end of the day.
Has the DOT tested this combination of ideas before? And if so, what was the result?
Yeah, so the Iowa DOT has never tried safety corridors previously that I'm aware of. They're something that have kind of been developed through research over the last several years. Other states have tried it, but this is the first pilot that I'm aware of that Iowa DOT has embarked on, at least in recent history.
Okay. What are the 6 stretches of road involved here?
Yes. So the 6 stretches are scattered around the state. Up in northwest Iowa, we have US 20 from Lawton to Mobile in Woodbury County. In western Iowa, we have US 6 from east of Council Bluffs to US 59 in Pottawatomie County. In central Iowa, we have I-80 from County Road F48 to Newton in Jasper County, and Iowa 5 from Iowa 92 to the Monroe County line in Marion County. And then in southeast Iowa, we have US 218 from Mount Pleasant to County Road J20 near Salem in Henry County, and Iowa 2 from Donaldson to US 61 in Lee County.
Why did you choose those particular corridors?
Yes, great question. So we picked these pilot corridors based on a process that we call the potential for crash reduction, PCR. And so what PCR does is it takes similar pure segments of roadway throughout the state, say a 2-lane road with 3,000 vehicles per day. It compares all of the segments of 2-lane roads with 3,000 vehicles per day around the state, and it looks at crash rates. And, there's an expected crash rate that we would expect to see on a roadway of that type. But these roadways had crash rates that exceeded what we expected. They were higher than expected. And so we kind of took a step back and we looked and, wanted to see what was causing it. There were no outward apparent issues related to, bad geometry or bad intersections or anything like that. So we thought, these would be good candidates for safety corridors. to see if just the idea of increased enforcement presence and increased reminders of safe driving practices through the media, if that can help drive down crashes in these areas. Are folks just being distracted, or they gotten complacent and they're not on their best behavior when they're driving through here, which is potentially leading to crashes. So wanted to take a stab at it and see if this would be effective. And if it's effective, then we may continue to do this elsewhere around the state in the future.
When is this all going to take place? What is your timeline for putting this in place?
Yes. So the signs and markings were all put up by the 1st of November. And we have our extra enforcement contracts in place with our local agencies out there. So it's basically enforced now, and it will continue through September 30th of 2024.
Okay. Is there anything else that you want to add, or that you think people need to know about this?
Yeah, it's important to note that the entire goal of this program, it's not a gotcha campaign. It's not a speed trap. It's to remind folks the importance of safe driving. Drivers play the largest role in roadway safety. And so if drivers are paying attention, they're buckled up, they're driving the proper speed limit for the roadway, and they're paying attention, they have the biggest impact on roadway safety. So it's important. We want drivers to be aware and be on their best behavior and buckle up when they're driving. And that will, we're hopeful that should certainly bring crash rates down and make the road safer for everyone, and allow everyone to go home safely at the end of the day to their families and their loved ones, which is our ultimate goal.
Okay. Well, fantastic. That's all I have, Ben. Thank you very much for your time. I sure appreciate it.
You're welcome, Mark. Have a good day.
That was Benjamin Hucker of the Iowa DOT explaining the department's new Safety Corridor program. What do you eat while you're out on the road? In the past, truck stops had a reputation for home-cooked style meals, stick-to-the-ribs kind of fare. And although some still do have that kind of food on offer, in recent years, it's become more common to find fast food outlets at truck stops instead. So is that what the truckers out there are eating? Some of the folks at Trucker Path became curious, so they set up a survey to find out. I talked with Trucker Path's Chief Marketing Officer, Chris Oliver, about the survey and what they found. What about the topic drew Trucker Path's attention? Why did the company look into this?
No, that's a great question. We brainstorm all the time on topics that we can ask the drivers to use Trucker Path. That's actually not a really good story behind this. I was just happened to be eating some carrots one day, and the team asked me, like, "What are you eating?" I said, "Carrots. Healthy food's good for you sometimes." And somebody said, "Well, I wonder what truckers eat, or what they buy most of the time." And I said, of course, my response was, well, whatever's available to truck stops. And this survey was born.
Okay. I wonder if you can just walk us through the findings, the results of the survey real quick.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, we posted the survey on our app, so pop up. So when people open the app, they see it and can easily just click on it and answer a couple questions right there, in the app itself. We had about 300 responses to this particular survey. We do them very regularly, so that's about a normal response for 2 days or so. The first question we asked really is, when you're looking for food, what are you looking for, and where are you going to eat it? So the question popped up, and the first question, they answered it obviously in mass, and we found that 40% of the drivers who responded tend to eat right there in the truck stop restaurant, which is exactly what I expected. I thought it'd be a lot more than that. 35% said that they buy what they can get at the truck stop, aiming for fresh and prepared food, and then take it out on the road. And then a little under a quarter, the remaining 23% said they get it, and they look for groceries they actually take on the road to prepare, or, not to be prepared, but like in my carrot scenario, they're ready to eat and fresh and ready and good to go. And so after those questions, really, it was just a little bit more detailed question of, okay, well, when you do buy something to go, what are you looking for? And the overwhelmingly most popular response was hot breakfast. Contrary to me and you, breakfast was the top of the list. 54%. That's a huge percentage. I was shocked by that. I would point out that we let them choose 3 things with this question. So the results don't add up to 100%. It's really just a percentage of who chose what and when. So the thing they took to go most is hot breakfasts, followed by hamburgers and hot dogs and sandwiches. Mexican food specifically was called out, which I live in Phoenix, so that doesn't surprise me. I eat more tacos than just about anything else. And then healthy food, surprisingly, was 25%, so a pretty good number. And then the other question of, well, when you shop for groceries to take on the road with you, what is it that you're looking for? And, of course, drinks, beverages, that's obvious. I think all of us would agree that which we buy most at a truck stop or a convenience store is beverages. It's followed by fruits and vegetables and healthy food and bread in that order, all around between 30 and 40% cited those. So, again, it was a pretty healthy set of things that they choose groceries to take on the road. I'm a big Monster Energy guy and Snickers bars, so I wouldn't have made the list.
Well, was there any part of the results that really surprised you, that really struck you as unusual?
I wouldn't say unusual, but like I said, it really surprised me that the hot breakfast was 54%. So that's the thing they really get to take with them for food. That's a lot, and like we talked about earlier, I'm not a breakfast guy, so that was a bit of a surprise for me. I wouldn't say it was shocking, just a bit of a surprise.
Okay. What do you think this says about driver health?
I think it's the fact that the healthy foods and fruits and vegetables were so high on the list and so regularly reported. I think it says they eat better than most of us would expect. When we travel, and especially when we're out for days at a time, just as a regular traveling public, we have to stop and grab things. And I'll be honest, I never stop and grab something healthy. So the fact that the drivers do that is, was pretty surprising and telling. I think, I think most would assume, you're going to grab a burger and fries and eat it and go about your business. But the fact that people are so health conscious really tells you that not only are they health conscious, but they're accustomed to life on the road and live it accordingly and try to be, I would say, as healthy as reasonable at a minimum.
It's really not what I expected. In the past, you always hear about people that have like the box of cereal next to their seat and they just reach in and grab a handful every once in a while as a snack on the road. And fresh fruits and vegetables and healthy food was kind of a surprise to me.
Yeah, me too. And I don't know if you've seen or not, but every year we release a list of the top 100 truck stops as they're rated by our drivers. And, we often do follow-up questions when we conduct that survey of, what is it that makes truck stops so attractive? In particular, those that are, the top 5 or so, we do follow-up interviews with some responders to get a better feel. And this last year was really telling that a lot of people spoke about a couple things when it came to food. One was restaurants that aren't chains. They like the mom-and-pop store. Or restaurant, that has some interesting, unique things, not just the standard fast food like we would expect to see most places. And the other one thing that really popped out a lot is something that they look for and really drives high ratings was a grocery-like environment where they could buy fruits and vegetables and natural foods, I guess you could say, or unprepared foods to take with them. So that was kind of surprising and uplifting. It's nice to hear that people are thinking about more than just the quick fast food.
That was Trucker Path's Chief Marketing Officer, Chris Oliver, talking about a recent survey the company conducted on what truckers are eating out on the road. We'll be back in a moment. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Attention all truckers, Dean Michael, the tax doctor here. I want to talk to you about those dreaded tax problems. I know you want to keep on trucking and not even think about them, but let's face it, they're not going away all on their own. You need professional help. I've been helping truckers put their tax problems in the rearview mirror for years. I can help you too. Call me now for a free consultation at 888-557-4020 or go to mytaxhelpmd.com. It's like I always say, keep your eyes on the road, I'll keep mine on the IRS. 888-557-4020.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline Now, welcome back. Like tires, fuel, and an engine, insurance is one of those things you just have to have for your truck. But not all insurance is created equal. Ashley Blackford is here with the experts from OOIDA's Truck Insurance Department to answer some questions.
Thanks, Mark, and hello to Trina Skywalker and Trista Roby with OOIDA's Insurance Department. How are you doing today, ladies?
Fantastic.
Doing great. Wonderful. Today we are talking about important information when leasing on to a carrier. Starting out, what are the common questions we've heard from people who have just leased on and they're shopping for insurance?
Well, obviously, us being an insurance, that's when they get transferred to us, that's the bulk of their questions. And a lot of times it does lead into other more general questions like, what do I have to have? What do they have to provide? Things of that nature. But most of our conversations focus on what kind of coverage do you need? What does it say in the lease? And then making sure that they're not carrying the same coverage through us and the motor carrier. And of course, sometimes it branches off of that where we have to get them to a different area where that's kind of their specialty.
There's also sometimes like a general conversation over what the motor carrier is required to carry, and there's sometimes some confusion over that and if they're carrying that or not. And we just kind of talk through all of that.
Yeah, and sometimes it leads to a conversation where we realize their lease is like 2 paragraphs.
Yes.
And then we have to have the conversation of they need to say in writing, what insurance they're providing, what you're required to carry. A compliant lease agreement is going to be several pages long.
Now, most insurance companies won't dive into a lease agreement. OOIDA insurance is kind of in a unique position because, of course, if you remember, you can have someone look at that lease agreement.
Correct. And we do offer to get them to like business services or we learn enough about it over time because we do have to sometimes take a look at that and figure out where the insurance requirements are and have that conversation. But truly, if you want to discuss whether or not it's a compliant lease, we do try to get them to the area that knows a lot more about that.
Yeah, because we're
confidently
we're quick to go to number 7 that says insurance and see that in the subtopic. And, that's what we're used to looking for. But there are so many areas of a lease agreement that could not be compliant, even if the insurance portion of it is.
Right.
Now, you had said that some lease agreements are 2 paragraphs long. How long they should be longer? How long should they be?
Pages.
Yeah, and I would say on average, a compliant lease is usually going to be, what do you think,
10 to 12.
7? Oh, I was going to say 7 to 10.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Somewhere in there.
So we can average on the 10 range. Yeah.
Longer than 2 paragraphs.
Yes.
And what should someone do if they get their lease agreement and it isn't very long and there isn't details about insurance?
It's kind of up to them at that point. We can't advise someone like, well, don't lease onto them because at the end of the day, it's your choice to make. It's our responsibility, or we feel it's our responsibility to say, hey, here's what you should be looking for because if something goes to court, this document, this paperwork is what is going to be in court with you. This is what they're going to refer back to.
Yeah, this is the legal contract,
Right.
And that's the big thing to remember when you're signing it. Really take your time to review that lease agreement and make sure that you understand all of it before you're signing it because it is, it's a legal binding contract. And I would urge people when I see those lease agreements, I urge them to go back to the motor carrier, especially, of course, insurance is my passion. So I urge them to go back and at least address the insurance portion. But yeah, typically going to get them to compliance and see what else they need to do.
Well, and depending on how open the lease is, if we generally won't ask for it. On the insurance side, we're not going to ask to see it. It's just a conversation of, hey, here's what you need to look for. But inadvertently, sometimes we do have a copy of it. And there have been times in the past where it's so open that we ethically can't write a policy. Depending on the coverage, physical damage doesn't generally have anything to do with your motor carrier. So, that's kind of a different ball of wax. But when it comes down to the liability, we can see how open it is, and then we know what a problem it could be if there were an accident, and it goes to court.
For you, for us, and for the motor carrier.
Right. And Trista, you mentioned a lot of the times it's kind of a more of an educational call of explaining to people what the motor carrier is supposed to provide. What is that?
The motor carrier is supposed to provide the primary liability coverage, the protection of the public, really 100% of the time. And then they will choose to put a portion of that liability back on you. Sometimes they say when you're bobtailing. Sometimes they say when you're no longer under
dispatch.
Under dispatch. Under their, I mean, really dispatch is the best word.
Yeah.
When you're no longer under their dispatch. That's really what it comes down to is finding out what coverage, diving into what coverage you need. But they should be carrying your primary liability. And typically they should be carrying your cargo coverage as well because the BOL is in their name.
Yeah, we had talked about that off the air a little bit, the cargo, because sometimes the motor carrier does try to make the owner-operator responsible for the cargo. And that's another conversation we have to have with them. The bill of lading is in their name. It's making the motor carrier responsible for the cargo. There's nothing making John Doe responsible for the cargo. So if the insurance policy is in John Doe's name, also that could be a problem in the event of a claim because he's not the one that's liable for it.
Right. And there's no contract making him responsible for it.
And when it comes to all this coverage, I mean, oftentimes nowadays you do DocuSign, everything's online, but how important is it to have a copy of probably the lease agreement, but also the coverage policy with you at all times?
Well, if you're stopped by DOT, they could ask to see both of those. Usually they want to see your cab card. They want to see proof of the primary liability because I think we could say that it comes up in almost every segment we do. That is the crucial coverage to have. It's the one that is mandated.
And the one that's posted on FMCSA and that, that sort of thing.
But they are, and I don't know that a lot of drivers know this, but you are supposed to carry a copy of the lease agreement too. I did confirm that, with a different area here because I thought that was the case, but I wanted to be confident in that. But in my mind, it's to tie it all together. When you show DOT the cab card, even if it wasn't required, I'd recommend it because the lease agreement is what ties that all together. The insurance card is going to be in the motor carrier's name, not in your name. So having the lease with you, I don't know that you're generally going to be asked for it if you're stopped. But
if you get an inexperienced DOT person, it might just make it easier.
Right.
Yes.
How important is it to ask your motor carrier what they pay for primary liability and cargo coverage? And what do you do if they show you and it's like a percentage of your settlement, or there seems to be some confusion there?
Well, generally, what we know is they cannot charge you more than they pay.
Yeah. So, I mean, really, you want to see what they're paying just to make sure, especially if they're taking it out of your settlement. You want to make sure that what they're taking out is the correct amount.
Yeah, they're not supposed to profit from it. So for them to, it's definitely unethical. I'm pretty sure it's illegal for them to charge more than they pay. But the way that some of them get around it, instead of saying we're charging you X amount per week for insurance, they'll just say, hey, we're taking 20% off the top. That's insurance escrow.
That's expensive.
Yeah.
So would I be allowed to ask for that, all that information, kind of the breakdown of everything to make sure if I felt like they weren't being completely honest?
I mean, you're allowed to ask for it. It's your relationship with the motor carrier. So I would I would always push for it. Whether or not they have to provide you with it, I'm not certain. But if they won't provide you with it, there's probably something pretty sketchy happening.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, they shouldn't have a problem with showing you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you're leasing onto a carrier, is there any other coverage you need?
Physical damage coverage is going to be your own choice. And Trina actually brought physical damage up earlier. If you have a lien holder, you're going to be required to have physical damage coverage. That's the coverage for the equipment itself, fire, theft, collision, vandalism. So if you have a lien holder, that's going to be a requirement through the lien holder, not necessarily through the motor carrier. More motor carriers are liking to see it because of the impact of that loss on not only you as the owner-operator, but them whenever you can't replace a $100,000 piece of equipment within their fleet, really, within their operating. So more motor carriers are asking to see it, but that is a coverage that you can and I think, in our opinion, should carry on your own.
And any additional coverage kind of means nothing if you don't have primary coverage. Is that right?
Right. Yeah. So like usually what the motor carrier is going to ask you to have is some sort of a bobtail or non-trucking liability and I think Trista was kind of going into that earlier as kind of a backup to the primary in case you're not under dispatch or on personal time. You know, that's all going to vary by insurance policies, the policy wording for that coverage, what the motor carrier lease agreement says. But it's commonly what you see is bobtail deadhead, something like that.
And I think the most important thing is those are secondary coverages. So this is sort of what you were getting at. I mean, they are secondary to that primary coverage. If there's no primary coverage, the secondary coverage can't exist. So if you're not leased on with a motor carrier and there's not primary liability coverage on you somewhere, then that secondary, you'd be carrying a secondary liability that likely would not pay in the event of an accident.
Have you ever seen that happen?
Well, I mean, that kind of goes back to the few times that we've had to decline to quote coverage because we don't want to see that happen. So if we look at a pretty barren lease agreement and it doesn't have any of the insurance, it doesn't say we're providing primary liability for you, then that's kind of when we are hesitant to offer the bobtail because it's not ethical for us to do if we know it's going to cause a problem down the road. But also, we can't be sure that the primary is in place without getting proof, that they have that coverage. But I can't think of a specific claim where we've seen that.
Yeah, I would venture to say that it happens.
Oh, yeah.
Just Trina and I don't work directly with claims often. But I would venture to say that it probably happens more often than we'd like.
Right.
Have you ever seen some motor carriers say they require physical damage or they provide it?
Occasionally there's like a lease purchase situation. There's a couple of large motor carriers that we see that quite a bit from where you're buying the truck through them.
And we are seeing them, even outside of that, we are seeing the motor carriers more and more require physical damage when that really should be an optional coverage if you don't have a lien holder. But again, I mean, they're looking out for that investment in their company.
But generally, if their name's not on the title, and that's kind of our standpoint, if their name's not on the title, then I don't know that they can really make it mandatory because it is usually not their concern. Unless their name is on the title and you're lease purchasing the truck through them, then they have every right to say, yeah, you have to carry this.
Right.
All right. Ladies, great information. Appreciate you coming in.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, you beat me to it.
Our thanks to Trina Skywalker and Trista Roby of OOIDA's Truck Insurance Department. If you have any questions about insurance, you can call 816-229-5791. We're Landline Now. I'm Ashley Blackbird. We'll be back after this.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Pennsylvania lawmakers are taking a crack at the truck parking crisis. Welcome back to Landline Now. We're about to cover that with Keith Goebel of Landline Magazine, along with the topic of cashless tolling in Michigan. Keith, always good to see you. How you doing?
Scott, doing well. I know we're getting deeper and deeper into the professional football season. How's your team doing?
You asked that because you know I'm a struggling and sad Chargers fan that will never be happy. So thank you for Keith for bringing that up.
Hey, I will say I do have my reasons on occasion to root for the Chargers as well. We've talked about it, but it's
we've talked about it. All right, that's for sure.
Yeah.
You coming from a Chiefs fan, I have. You have no room to stand on in terms of suffering, at least in recent years.
But we digress.
We do digress. Let's move on here to Pennsylvania, which has a few football teams. We're not going to talk about that, though. We do know about the lack of truck parking spaces nationwide. Pennsylvania aware of it as well, apparently. A committee there in the State House is looking into solutions here. They are, I think, starting a study, right, Keith?
Yeah, hey, we talk about trends from time to time. Hopefully, this will become a trend. Pennsylvania has tried to jump on board as recently as a year ago with the trend that Washington State tried to start with restroom access, and Pennsylvania's kind of reached a lull on that particular issue. But maybe on the truck parking, potentially, Pennsylvania will be at the forefront. Maybe other states will look to do what, at least what they're in the process of authorizing, and that is a study of the state's truck parking or lack thereof. The Pennsylvania DOT has reported, and they've got about 11,000 plus truck parking spaces available throughout the state, and that would include the private truck stops, PennDOT's rest areas, welcome centers, and the Pennsylvania Turnpike Service Plaza. But in providing that number, they also point out that there's a shortage of more than 4,000 truck parking spaces across the state, and with that, their data shows that there's over 1,000 trucks each night that are parked on highway shoulders and in ramps, and of course, Pennsylvania is not unlike a lot of states. I recently traveled from the Kansas City area to Chattanooga, and specifically in Tennessee, really was notable in how many trucks are similar, looking for spots, or you see them in areas that it's not safe for obviously the trucks themselves, but for the traveling public. But yeah, hopefully the case here with Pennsylvania, this House resolution that has passed unanimously from their House Transportation Committee will kind of start the process to countering, again, a lack of truck parking by having this study that they can look to and with the idea of coming up with some workable solutions.
Yeah, acknowledging the problem obviously is the first step here, and you talk about coming up with solutions. I suppose the information they get from this study is going to be helpful in determining just what they need to do. But have they talked about the process and what this is going to look like as time goes on?
Yeah, well, for one, doing a study and then coming up with some recommendations for exactly how they need to address it. Of course, it's all for the most part open at this point because they would have to do the study.
Sure.
But yes, looking at again what it is like for trucks that are traveling along highways and interstates, and it is worth pointing out this resolution that started in the House Transportation Committee, which they voted unanimously for it. Sends it on to the full House for consideration with a resolution whatever chamber that it originates, if it passes that chamber, I mean, it's done. It doesn't have to go through the other chamber. It's essentially just, it's letting folks know that you've got a legislative body that believes that something is necessary. But again, it's worth pointing out one of the members of the House Transportation Committee has a trucking background, and pointed out to state lawmakers that were there on the committee that, he can vow for the fact that it is an issue. He himself, his experiences that he had, and those folks that worked with him. And whenever he had a trucking operation, so definitely having someone in the legislature to vouch for the necessity, obviously, never hurts to have truck drivers themselves contacting, at least in this case, the state of Pennsylvania, the House lawmakers before they have a full consideration on the House floor. To make sure that they are well aware of the issue.
Yeah, we're getting there. I do think that we are seeing more awareness out there that this is a crisis, that something needs to be done about it. And these studies, or this study in particular, will go a long way to hopefully coming up with solutions. I know it seems like we're going slow here, but we are making progress, and time will tell as to what that looks like. But
true, it is worth pointing out. Of course, OIDA has a stance on this, obviously, in favor of anything that can be done to address truck parking. In my story that I did, Doug Morris, OIDA's director of state government affairs, as he pointed out that the association has seen a lot of truck parking studies. They've seen a lot of surveys. That it's time to actually do something to address the issue. So there is that part of it. Yes, it is good to identify and come up with what needs to be done, but
it's time to do it.
It is time to actually do it. Yes,
exactly. Let's move on to Michigan here for one last story. The state trying to make cashless tolling a thing, but a House bill wants to give motorists some options. What exactly are supporters hoping for here?
Yeah, well, this is the Blue Water Bridge there that connects Point Edward, Ontario, and Port Huron. Really is the poster child for this. Back in 2020, they stopped accepting cash, and the Michigan DOT, over that bridge, stopped accepting cash. There are plans, they're already set, that what I believe it's as of the first of the year, no longer going to be accepting any sort of cash, not accepting cash, not accepting, I believe it's like cashier's checks, checks of any sort. It's just all going to be cashless.
Are people paying with cashier's checks at tolling stations? I guess
sure
maybe. I'm sure it happens. Yeah.
I'm sure it does happen.
I digress.
Folks that might want to pay in pennies, they haven't had that option for quite some time.
True.
But with this, again, it's been cashless for a while, but they're officially going cashless and only accepting this Edge Pass program. If you have credit or debit cards too, but anyway, legislation that's been introduced there in the House that would require state-owned infrastructure to accept cash for all tolls, and that would be if you're a truck driver, if you're a commuter, if you're just passing through as a traveler. But yes, the point being made that. Cash is supposed to be essentially a protected source of payment, and this particular lawmaker in Michigan is wanting to make sure that it continues to be an option for those who want to use it.
We'll see where this one goes. We should mention the rule would not apply to the Ambassador Bridge, obviously privately owned, so this would only deal with these public roadways that we're talking about here. Keith, we've got to leave it there, but folks can check out your work on these stories and others from all 50 states at landline.media. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we appreciate you for listening to Landline Now. That's our time for today, but you can meet us right back here for another episode tomorrow. Until then, take care and drive safe out there.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife.
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome,
and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us! Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.